Hey Student Success, this is your video for week 2 of the semester, or the session rather. Runs from March 29th through April 4th. So you've made it through week 1. I know week 1 had quite a bit going on, so week 2 might be kind of a welcome reprieve for a little bit, not quite as busy. So as a reminder, when you get into the course, the Start Here section, you may use less and less frequently as you get used to the class, but it's a lot of just kind of your beginning of the session information, your syllabi, your expectations, your course messages and your announcements. Keep track of your grades there. The calendar has everything on there that you need to know. It's all kind of uploaded in there to let you know when things are due. As each week opens, you'll see it. All right, so under the Lessons tab, this is where you go for just general casual conversation. Does not count for attendance. Muddy point is if you have a question. Here's a textbook access. There is a link to each chapter inside your folder, so you don't have to go there every time. Here is another plug for your Student Success Workshop assignment. So if you open up that document there, it's going to bring up all of the workshops that are offered throughout the semester. Of course, now we're in the second 8-week session, so I'm going to scroll down through here. We're after spring break at this point, and so here, starting at this point down, are all the workshops that are in the second 8-week session. You will register for them in My Stark State. So again, you go up here. In My Stark State, you click on Academic Support. You will see the Student Success Workshops, and you'll register there. Some of you will get like a confirmation and a link right away. Some of them, it'll be 24 hours before the workshop. It just depends on what office on campus is putting on the workshop. And you just need to upload your certificate of completion after you're done attending that workshop by the end of this session, so the week 8 of the semester. All right, so I'm going to scroll down. We are in week 2 now. Chapter 4, so we're going to click in there. This will be open and viewable by the time you see this video. So Chapter 4 is talking about listening, taking notes, and remembering. And you will have 2 assignments this week. You have another discussion forum, just one discussion forum this week. You have to post your original response by Wednesday for week 2 attendance, respond to 2 classmates by Sunday, and then your Chapter 4 assignment. So let's take a look at what you're doing. In the materials folder, we will click on the Chapter 4 textbook link, which is opened right here, and then the Chapter 4 slides. I'm going to use these as my basis for kind of like the lecture for a few minutes here. So listening, taking notes, and remembering, you want to make sure that you approach college a little differently than maybe you did as a high school student, or maybe even as you did, like if you attempted college a few years ago. You want to make sure that you're kind of evaluating and looking to see how you are in these different areas. So college is different from high school. There's a lot of personal responsibility. Time management is really essential, and so you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can do to take the information in so you can eventually retain it and apply it. So what do you have to do to prepare for class? If you are I think really some of this can apply to both in a classroom setting as well as in an online setting. But before every class, whether it's a video, a physical lecture, what do you want to get out of that class? How is this class going to connect me to what I need to learn in the next class or in the course overall, or as it applies to my major? So kind of set those goals for yourself as you begin to watch a video, as you begin to read a chapter, as you begin to sit down for a class. What's the point? What are you going to get out of it? Physically, all this is kind of common sense stuff that you've been hearing for years. Make sure that you're well rested, you're prepared in terms of you're hungry, you've met those needs, those basic needs you've met. Then make sure you're prepared for class. Again, some of this is common sense, but I'm always a little surprised when I have students who show up several weeks into the semester without anything to write with, anything to write on. And every once in a while, that's okay. Like, you forget things. Totally understand that. But if it's habitual, you need to know to make those adjustments. Have your materials so that you can be successful. Make sure that you are on time, that you give yourself extra time to get there, and then clear away distractions. For you, if that is your phone, turn your phone off or on silent. If it is, maybe you sit too close to the door, move your seat. Just understand what your distractions are so you can kind of cut down on those. All right, so now you're prepared, you're in the actual classroom or you're listening to a lecture. Again, you want to make sure that you are mentally prepared so that you are ready to get kind of in the right headspace. Physically, if you're in a classroom, sitting toward the front of the room, making eye contact is going to almost force you to try to listen a little bit better because you're so close. Focus on what's being said. Again, this is eliminate those distractions, and then look for signals. And this can be done in a video as well. Does the instructor raise or lower their voice? Do they talk a little bit more quickly? Do they write something on the board or do they highlight something? All those are signals that, hey, I need to really hone in on this part. This is important. Okay? Also, you want to make sure that, as much as they focus on something that's important, maybe they're not focusing on something else. And that kind of signals that, okay, well, this is not as important as what they just focused on. I might not need to know this information. So sorting through the information, taking notes. Now, I will put a caveat here. Not everyone is a note taker, and that's okay. I don't want everyone to think like, oh my gosh, if I don't take notes, I'm not going to succeed, or I absolutely have to take notes. Because I have students who will say, I take notes and then I never look at them again. And if that's the case, like why waste your time, right? Put your energy into another modality. So maybe you're an audio learner. And so really just focusing on listening, and every once in a while you might have to jot something down, or, maybe pictures, visuals are your thing. So you really key in on the PowerPoints or the videos or whatever the case might be. But if you are a note taker, if they are beneficial to you, knowing what kind of notes to use and to be the most beneficial to you is important. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Also, asking questions is a great way to stay engaged. It's a great way to stay focused and also kind of aid your comprehension and note taking. You could also record lectures. You have to have permission, depending on the class, but that could be a great way to kind of make sure you're not missing any material. So what do you do if, and these are just different scenarios, you may come across, if your instructor speaks too fast. I know I am guilty of this sometimes. I do speak quickly. I just get excited and I talk very quickly. I think in my videos, I've not heard it as big of an impact because students can obviously pause, rewind, replay. In my face-to-face classes, though, I do try to be a little bit more aware of it. So if that happens in a class you're in, ask your instructor, can you repeat that? Can you slow down? Talk to them individually. There's also in cases if your instructor has an accent, if they maybe speak too softly. So little situations that you may come across at some point in your college career. So this again talks about effective note-taking then. It does support your listening. How many notes you take will depend on, if you're an audio learner, if you're a read-write learner, what kind of learner you are. And it can help you kind of create a study guide as well as jot down what the instructor thinks is important. And so what kind of note-taking methods are there? And I'm going to pull this up. This is actually in the text up here, so you'll see this larger. But you can kind of see from here, it talks about the different modalities or the different methods of note-taking. And so you may already know what your note-taking preference is, or maybe this is a great time for you to kind of test out something new and see how that works for you. I'll talk about those as we go into the link up there. All right, so note-taking tips. Obviously be prepared, have those materials ready for you. One thing that I learned real early on that was really helpful is always label my notes, the day, the time, just making sure that it's easy for me to find. Make sure that you can have a good space so you can see anything that's being written. Some students try to write down every single word someone says. It's really difficult to do that, first of all. And secondly, it's not necessary. So you really want to focus on the key points that are important. If you have a system, use symbols or abbreviations, something that might make it go a little quicker for you. Maybe leave spaces or a little asterisk or something if you're like, oh, I don't understand this, or I'm missing something here, I need to go back to it. Review your notes as soon as possible. Same day, that afternoon, that evening, look at your notes. Be like, okay, I really understand this, or ooh, I don't get this. I'm missing some information. And so you can kind of fill in those gaps. It also helps for, studying purposes. You can start to really study. And then if you can summarize your notes and the main ideas in your own words, you know that you're on the right track. So if you miss class, again, some of this is common sense. Just check the syllabus, check with the instructor, maybe ask a classmate to see if you can kind of borrow any notes they have. I'm going to jump back up here real quick. Something else I think is really important is if you can read the chapter before a lecture, you can start taking notes on the chapter before the class. That way, when you get to class, you already have kind of an outline started and you can really just focus on the main points that the instructor says without feeling the need to write everything down because you already did the background work. You already read the chapter and kind of set yourself up for that. All right, and then the chapter also talks about making sure that we save information into our memory. So making these short-term to long-term memory. So again, making sure that you are setting goals. We talked about this a couple slides ago. Like, I'm going to accomplish X, Y, Z as I listen to this lecture or as I read. These are the things I need to know, or the point that I'm going to try to connect to. Make a connection to your everyday life. Try to connect personal examples, meaningful information. Try to understand what you already know about the topic and what you're learning about it. Chunk things, use mnemonics, use pictures, use little rhymes. Whatever it takes, kind of use those little tricks. Maybe it's rehearsal, you repeat things over and over. All of that is going to help you take information kind of from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. And then you have to practice retrieving it. So flashcards, practice tests, study groups, those kind of things are going to help you retrieve the information from your long-term memory. Okay. All right, so that's kind of the slides. If we go into the actual chapter itself, so again, we go over here. I'm just going to go here. Here we go. So the different sections are, getting yourself ready for success. And this is kind of this first part where you're self-assessing, checking to see, where am I? How should I approach note-taking, class attendance in general? And then how do you know you're ready for class? What things can you do to prepare for class? And again, we talked about this in the little slides. Are you really listening? Are you a good listener? Sometimes people really think they do. My husband thinks he's a good listener. I will tell you right now, he is not. So what can you do? Some of us really do think we're a good listener, but if we're easily distracted or we sometimes are in our own little world, are we really getting everything we need to get out of a lecture? So this will go over some tips on how to be more active in your listening so that you are, enhancing your chances of comprehension. And some of this was kind of talked about in that little slideshow, but this goes into more detail so that you can prepare yourself. This is the section on note-taking. And so this is going to go over the different types of note-taking. Here's that little table. So some of you may use lists. Some of you may use outlines, concept maps. If you're a visual learner, concept map is great. Cornell method, I really like Cornell method. It's really organized. It really sets up like a study guide situation. And then underneath that, you'll see all the methods go into more detail so you can see how they're set up and some kind of benefits and maybe how to use it most to be effective. There's that visual. And then this is what Cornell notes look like. And again, I really like that. It's supposed to help with both organization as well as like setting up a study guide type deal. And so this will talk about, just again, general note-taking tips. There are also lots of, I'll kind of go backwards for a quick second. There are also note-taking apps. So if you're more of a digital note taker, this will take you and talk to you about note-taking apps. So that's always a possibility. And then the next section talks about, your memory. How can you use memory tips and strategies? This will go through the process itself, kind of that short-term to long-term and retrieval process. And these are all different strategies. They'll talk about, again, what I've already referenced, like linking information to your everyday life, connecting to what you already know, There's this thing called picture superiority effect that says that we remember pictures better than just words. So if you can associate pictures and words together, you're more likely to remember that. Use the information. If you just memorize something but then you never use it, you're going to lose it. I know it's kind of like a cliche. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. But yeah, it's true. If you don't use the information, it's going to just fade away and stay in your long-term memory, and you're never going to be able to retrieve it. So you want to use the information, chunk the information, and they kind of equate it to how we often chunk like numbers to make sense. Eliminate distractions. Sometimes just repeating information is helpful. Testing your information. All of those are different tips, and there are some different activities and strategies that go along with that. All right, so that is chapter 4, listening, note-taking, and memory. So you have 2 assignments. We'll go down to the assignment folder. The first one, you'll see it's actually 2 things together. Okay, so you're going to click on the How Well Do You Listen survey, and it's going to open up kind of like what your digital scavenger hunt and those kind of things are.
Now that you've read about focus,
put that down. It's going to, type your first name in right there. You're going to go through, and it's going to ask you like a survey, like how well do you listen? It's going to kind of navigate and give you some chances to think about how well you really do listen. So make sure you click through. When you're all done, it'll give you some kind of general results. I'm not going to see how you did on the actual survey. That's for you, but you're going to use your survey results to post in the discussion forum. So after you get your results for the How Well Do You Listen, you are going to answer these 3 questions. How did you do on that survey? Did the results surprise you? And then how can you improve? Like, again, this is specific to listening. How can you make an improvement in your listening? So your original response is answering those 3 questions by Wednesday for week 2 attendance. And then you'll go back in at some point and respond to 2 other classmates by Sunday for the rest of the points for the discussion forum. Okay, so again, you have to complete the survey first and then use those results to answer your discussion forum questions. All right, and the second assignment this week is your Chapter 4 assignment. It's a Word document. You'll click right there. It's going to open up into your Chapter 4 right here. You'll see this. There are 3 areas, the 3 areas that Chapter 4 focused on: listening, note-taking, and memory. And you are going to think about 2 things that you're going to do to improve your listening. 2 things you're going to do to improve your note-taking, and 2 things you're going to do to improve your memory. So maybe you have to go back up into your text and look and say, okay, what are 2 things I can do to improve my memory? Oh, okay, maybe I can use mnemonics, and maybe I can eliminate distractions. Whatever it might be, you're going to come up with 2 strategies in each of those categories. 2 for listening, 2 for note-taking, 2 for memory. What things are you going to do to improve those areas? When do you expect to take the action? So it could be something like the next time I'm in a face-to-face class, or it could be, maybe tomorrow when I read a certain chapter. It'll vary depending on, your class schedule, your expectations, that kind of thing. And then how will you know you've accomplished the action? How will you know your listening has improved? How will you know your note-taking has improved? How will you know your memory has improved? So that's what you're filling out for your Chapter 4 assignment. It's just kind of reflecting on your current abilities in these 3 areas, what you can do to improve them, when you're going to try that, and then how you know you actually made that improvement. When you're done with that, you will click in there. It's a drop box, which means you'll click in there. Again, due by Sunday. Hopefully you saved it maybe to your desktop, so you'll hit Browse. You'll find whatever the file name is, hit Open. I'm not going to do it since I'm not fully submitting it, but then you'll see it pop up and you'll hit Submit, and that's how I will grade that assignment. Okay, so as a recap, you are reading this week in Chapter 4. You're going to complete the How Well Do You Listen survey, use those results to post in the discussion forum by Wednesday for week 2 attendance, Sunday to respond to 2 classmates, and your Chapter 4 assignment is due Sunday as well. All right, hope everyone has a great week. We'll talk to you later. Bye.